My husband decided to seek revenge when he found out where I spend my weekends.
Made a very big mistake. I don't even know where the mistakes began or when I started to become so stupid and lustful. I've destroyed my once happy marriage because of my lustful desires. I don't even know how I got here. Everything right now is on the verge of being lost. Everything happened so fast it was like a flash, and I'm so ashamed of myself right now. I've done something so despicable. I can't even look myself in the mirror right now, and I don't think I will ever be able to forgive myself for having an affair and cheating on my husband. I blame myself for everything. I got so carried away by my lust that I couldn't even control myself. I'm so confused and lost, but I hope by posting here someone might learn something. I have ruined my marriage with my own hands, all just because of some fun with a younger person. My kids won't even talk or look at me, and the same with every other member of my family. My husband doesn't want me anymore and is saying he wants a divorce. I know you must be wondering about what happened, so first my backstory. My name is Fiona, and I am a 45-year-old woman. My husband, Victor, is a 47-year-old man. We have been married for 25 years, and we live in Alabama in the United States of America. We have 3 kids, Ariel and Arthur, who are twins and are 23 years old, and Skylar, who is male and 19 years old. My husband and I were high school sweethearts and got married a few years after we were both done with high school. My husband was the star quarterback back then in school, LOL, and I was the nerd that was constantly getting bullied. That all stopped when he started protecting, and throughout my last years in high school, I never got bullied again. High school was rough. I was the geek, always a target for bullies. Victor was the big shot quarterback everyone loved. It honestly felt like he belonged to a different universe. Then, out of the blue one day, lol, we bumped into each other in the hallway, and things took a surprising turn. Victor, against all odds, started hanging out with me. It felt like something out of a teen movie, LOL. He saw beyond the labels and actually liked me for me. As we spent time together, he became my shield, standing up to the bullies who had been making my life a misery. With Victor around, the bullying stopped. His presence was like a force that made those jerks back off. I couldn't believe the star quarterback was choosing to be with me, just a regular girl trying to get by. Victor not only had my back, but showed me a world where kindness mattered more than cruelty. In his company, I found an unexpected ally and friend, and then a husband, LOL. I remember our first date. I was all jittery, waiting for Victor to show up for our first high school date. I was 16 and he was soon to be 18 and done with high school. The vibe was like a mix of excitement and nerves. When he finally came, he had this cute, shy smile that just made me feel good. We kicked off our date with a chill walk in the park, where we chatted and shared our embarrassing and hilarious secrets. Victor genuinely cared about what I had to say. He made me feel important. We sat on a bench, snacking on popcorn, and watched the sunset. It felt like the start of something real special. That first high school date turned into a memory I'll never forget. On our second high school date, Victor surprised me with this cool 2-seater bike, a fun ride that had us pedaling around town, laughing like crazy people. After our biking adventure, Victor suggested a picnic. We found a nice spot in the park, laid out a blanket, and chowed down on homemade sandwiches and snacks. It was just us, enjoying good food and the simple pleasure of being carefree teenagers. Sitting there munching away, I couldn't help but appreciate how thoughtful Victor was. Our second date was all about having a good time together, creating another awesome memory in our high school days. On our third high school date, Victor took me to this awesome secret spot of his, a place he really loved. We wandered off into quiet trails, away from all the school, hustle, bustle, and chaos, until we stumbled upon his little hideaway. Surrounded by nature, it felt like our own peaceful escape. Victor shared why this spot meant so much to him, making it seem like our personal little haven. Chilling in his favorite hideout, I could see how much Victor trusted me, opening up about his special place. In our early 20s, with Victor at 22 and me at 20, we decided to get married. In fact, we were knee-deep in planning our marriage. College costs were like a constant weight on our wallets. Victor was grinding through medical studies as he wanted to become a medical surgeon, and I was chasing an art degree to fuel my passion. Dreams were big, but money was tight. We'd sit down, crunching numbers and trying to figure out how to have a wedding without going broke. Nights were spent talking about our future, balancing our studies with the reality of becoming a married couple. It wasn't easy on our wallets, but our youthful hope and shared determination turned those challenges into building blocks. On our big day, Victor and I found ourselves in this cute little church, surrounded by familiar faces of close friends and family. The vibe was a mix of excitement and nerves, lol, making it clear that what we were doing was a pretty big deal. Walking down the aisle, emotions hit me like a truck. The simple setting of the church didn't take away from the fact that this moment was huge. It just made everything feel real and genuine. The church, with its modest decorations, perfectly matched the essence of our love, straightforward but deep. With our favorite people around, you could feel the joy and support in the air. Yeah, nerves were there too, like a bunch of butterflies having a party in my stomach. Totally normal given the promises we were about to make. Standing up there with Victor, looking into his eyes, I felt at ease. Our vows were simple, but you could tell they came from the heart, a testament to the love that had grown from high school days to this life-changing moment. The party afterward was a blast. Lots of toasts, laughter, and good times with the folks who've been with us through it all. Our wedding day might not have been some grand affair, but it was rich in real emotions. Years later, and we were at such good places, we graduated, and Victor is now a very successful medical surgeon. Too successful, I'd say. He always has to be on call and available regardless of the day and time. That has been affecting our relationship as he doesn't even have time for me anymore. As for me, even though I got my art degree, I never really used it, as I chose to be a stay-at-home mom, SHM. I chose to stay home and take care of the kids while Victor went out and worked. Besides, after Victor's dad died, he left Victor a sizable inheritance, so we weren't struggling at all. Financially, we were in a very good place. Victor had everything set up. In case he did retire, so we wouldn't go broke or anything, he didn't even need to work, but he still kept working, because the hospital needed him and he loved his job. He also made sure a trust fund and college fund was set up for all our kids, so all in all, we're in a very good place. Emotionally, though, it had been a while since Victor and I had a time to ourselves or were even intimate. Our marriage life was suffering as he didn't have any time for me. I guess I should have just talked to him, but I was so desperate for any atom of affection that I went ahead and cheated. I met Charles at the grocery store. Yes, a grocery store. I was done shopping for provisions and was on my way to checkout when I bumped into him LOL, like the way I had bumped into my husband back then in high school. Charles was young. He looked like he was only a few years older than my eldest kids, Ariel and Arthur, and he was very handsome. He apologized to me and offered to help me carry my stuff to checkout and then to my car, but I refused. Again, he offered to help pay for my stuff, but I refused since he hadn't caused me or the stuff I bought any harm by bumping into him. I then checked out and left, but he kept following me. He told me his name was Charles, and I introduced myself. It was obvious he was trying to flirt with me, so I told him my age and that I was way older than him. He told me that he didn't mind as I was beautiful. Now I know that I am beautiful, and I get complimented a lot about it. Also, people sometimes tell me that I look a lot younger than I actually am, which is understandable since I take good care of my skin and work out to keep in shape. But just hearing it from someone as young as Charles made me feel happy. Also, because of the emotional distance between me and my husband as a result of his work, I was feeling emotionally staffed for attention. I smiled and thanked him, but still I told him I was married. Charles told me that he didn't mind as he just wanted to be friends. Inwardly, I knew that was a lie, and I should have just left then and there, but I honestly don't know what stupid and idiotic thought and mistake that made me stay and give Charles my number. Before I even got home, he had already started texting me. Soon, Charles and I were texting regularly. I guess I did it because I was feeling so lonely. The kids weren't around as Ariel and Arthur were in college. Skylar was also in college as he graduated from high school early. Did I mention that the kids were big fans of their dad? They were all pursuing the medical field in college. They had taken their dad's brains LL and didn't take my creative side. Ariel was studying to become a nurse, while Arthur and Skylar were both studying to become medical surgeons. As a result of that, I was left alone at the house a lot, and that made me really lonely. Charles and I were texting a lot, and we were also flirting. I guess I should have felt guilty then, but I didn't because I felt it was harmless flirting, and what Victor didn't know would never hurt him. Charles and I did not have a lot in common. He was not an art person, but was more of a music person. Unlike me, he also did not like the kind of movies I liked, but that just drew us closer. I also found out Charles was only 24 years old, only a year older than Ariel and Arthur. I felt guilty, but still stupidly I carried on. Charles was hell-bent on making me see things his way, lol. He said that if I watched some of the movies that he liked, I would like them too. He was also empathetic and would listen to me rant and talk endlessly. Now that I think about it, Charles was a walking red flag, but I was so starved for attention that I didn't even care to look further at the kind of person he was. Charles put on a facade. At first he made me trust him, but then when trouble came, he abandoned me. Charles was charismatic, and so it was easy for him to pretend that he cared about me. Soon I was smiling and laughing more to the extent that my friends, and even my kids and Victor noticed. But whenever they asked, I lied and told them I just wanted to appreciate life more. No. Charles had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world to him. He honestly knew how to get under a person's skin and into their heart. Soon I was inviting Charles to the house when Victor was away to watch movies with me, and then we would try to convince each other that our movie taste was superior to the others. I knew that what I was doing was wrong, but I honestly paid no mind to it. I inwardly tried convincing myself a lot of the time that I was doing nothing with Charles, even though I knew that it would eventually lead to something. On one faithful day, Charles came over while Victor was away. Victor had previously told me that he wouldn't be coming back that night, so Charles and I had both decided that we would have a movie marathon all night long, and then Charles would leave really early in the morning before Victor would be back. Charles came over, and soon we were on Netflix watching a few movies. I honestly do not know how it happened, and I cannot even explain how it happened. It all happened quickly and in a flash, but soon Charles kissed me and I responded, and we got intimate. It was only until the next day. It was around 3 o'clock in the morning, and Victor wasn't back, but I knew he would be back by 7 or 8. I finally realized what I had done, and I hurriedly kicked Charles out before Victor would come back. I was horrified by the fact that I had cheated on my husband. What would Victor say? What would Victor do? All those questions kept running around in my mind. I felt so guilty, but I also felt horrified because I had enjoyed it. I was so emotionally starved that I had cheated on my husband with a young boy that was only a year older than my twins. And when my husband came back from the hospital, I felt so guilty, but I couldn't tell him because I knew he would divorce me and leave me. I didn't want that. I love my husband, and I wanted to spend the rest of my life with him. My husband was kind, humble, and helpful, but he did not like cheating at all. My husband was the kind of person that believed in communication. He believes if you have any issues, talk it out with your partner instead of going out and cheating. I pretended as if everything was fine, and as if I didn't just cheat on my husband a few hours ago. We chatted and talked, and then Victor went to rest because he had been working all night. I blocked Charles after sending him a quick message to never message me again, and all was well for a few days. After I had blocked Charles, he called me for a few times with some numbers before finally letting me be. I was starting to feel lonely, and I realized that Charles was the only person that made me not feel bored. He entertained me. I am also ashamed to admit it, but I missed the intimacy. So after wrestling with my inner mind for a few days, I finally unblocked Charles. He soon sent me a quick text, and soon we were talking again. Charles convinced me that what Victor didn't know wouldn't kill him, and as long as he never found out about the affair, we would be safe. Charles assured me that it would be easy to hide the affair because Victor worked a lot and was usually working on weekends. And also my kids were in college, so it was just me in the house. Charles convinced me that I wasn't doing much wrong by cheating on Victor because it was Victor's fault for neglecting me. Like a person without a mind of their own, I fell for Charles's words, and soon Charles and I were having our secret affair in the house. Whenever Victor was away at the hospital for weekends, Charles would come over and spend a lot of time. We would also be intimate a lot. Charles also convinced me to start giving him money. Victor and I had a joint account, even though Victor was the one earning all the money, And also because we were well off, I started giving Charles money for stuff, like gas, groceries, clothes, and other stuff. I became so engrossed in the affair and so involved that I think I lost myself. I guess Victor must have started to suspect because he started coming home randomly a lot of times. That should have been a wake-up call for me, but I still ignored it at this point. I was so deep in with Charles that I just couldn't stop. One day, I and Charles were in the middle of being intimate. When I heard Victor's car pull up to the driveway, I was so shocked because he wasn't supposed to be home by this time. I immediately dragged Charles off me and hurriedly got dressed and arranged the bed. I had to hide Charles in one of our kids' rooms, since our kids had gone off to college. Their rooms were mostly unused nowadays. It still had all their stuff from childhood, though, and they usually stayed in the rooms whenever they came to visit, so I always kept it clean. Thankfully, Victor didn't even think to check the kids' room, and I guess he didn't want me to know he was suspecting me, so he acted Norma and stayed home all throughout the day. Charles couldn't leave and had to spend the night in the kids' room. The next day, however, when Victor had left to go to work, Charles then came out. Since he had spent the night there, he hadn't really eaten much, so I let him bathe and eat breakfast with me. Then we started getting intimate. That was where I made such a huge mistake, you see. I should have just sent Charles home after having breakfast with him instead of getting intimate with him again. I guess Victor must have really suspected me because he came right back to the house and caught me and Charles right in the act of getting intimate. Have you ever seen your life flash right before your eyes? That is what happened to me the moment Victor dashed into our matrimonial bed and caught me and Charles together intimate. I immediately, on an impulse, hurriedly covered myself with the bedsheets and then started crying. Charles' clothes were on the floor, so Victor grabbed them and refused to give them to him, and then kicked Charles out naked. I just watched everything unfold, realizing that I had ruined my life. Victor didn't even scream at me, and I guess that was what horrified me the most. I wanted him to have a reaction, to say anything to me, to scream at me, to ask me how could I. I just wanted him to have a reaction, but he did not. He threw Charles' clothes in the trash, and then left the house, even though I kept calling him to come back to let me explain. I cried for hours on end. What had I done? I had ruined my life, and there was no going back from here. My life was gone. My marriage that I have struggled so hard to build was gone. I knew that there was no way Victor would forgive me. I had scarred him for life. Victor was going to leave me, and I knew that I would go down. I had no source of income on my own, no assets. Suddenly, I regretted the decision I made to be a stay-at-home wife all those years. Victor didn't even waste time in broadcasting what I had done. I was even more horrified by the way he had told everyone about my betrayal and cheating. I got a notification on my phone that Victor had added me to a group chat on WhatsApp with my family, our friends, and his family. It was as if I had a premonition of what he was about to do. I tried calling him hurriedly, but he refused to pick up. Then he posted screenshot of my messages with Charles, and then did a voice note about how he had come into the house and caught me and Charles in the act. My phone started buzzing. Everyone was blowing up my phone. I was getting text messages about how I could have done something so horrible and about how I had ruined my marriage. My parents were so disappointed, my friends were disappointed and shocked, and Victor's family was enraged. I guess Victor didn't want our kids to find out by someone else telling them, so he called them and told them. I only know that because soon after my kids were calling me. At first, I was too scared to pick, but I knew my kids. If I didn't pick, they would come over to the house, and facing them in person would be even more horrifying than talking to them on the phone. So I picked up the phone. My kids were so shocked, they were so disappointed in me. I tried to give them an excuse. I tried to tell them about how I was so lonely, and that's why I did it, but they weren't hearing it. They told me why I haven't talked to them. They told me that Victor had been planning to retire soon, and that he would have all the time in the world. Safe to say I had ruined my life. My kids didn't want to talk to me anymore. My family, and even Victor's family, were enraged at what I had done, as they thought Victor and I were happy together. I tried calling Victor multiple times, but he wouldn't pick up, so I sent him a lot of texts, explaining why I did it, apologizing, and telling him I had felt so lonely, but Victor would hear none of it. He told me he knew how lonely I was, and that he had been planning to retire. But he hadn't told me because he had wanted it to be a little surprise. I couldn't believe my ears. He also told me that he had been suspecting that I had been cheating on him, and that was why he started coming home randomly. He told me he gave me only a few days to pack my stuff and leave his house. and that he would come to give me divorce papers to sign. I had to pack up and go to my parents' house because even though they were very angry at me, they would never abandon me in my time of need. As for Charles, he blocked me, and I cannot even reach him. It is as if he never existed in the first place. I know what I did was wrong, and I am regretting it. I will continue to regret it for the rest of my life. But I am hoping that by posting here, someone might see this and learn a lesson from my mistake. Thank you all for listening.
You know, when the consequences of your actions hit you like a tidal wave, and you start to ponder if you had done things differently, maybe you wouldn't be where you were at that moment of you wondering. That was the stage of life I was at. If I had put in more effort into my marriage and loved my husband more and not started having an affair, I would still have a bit of my sanity left. Well, what did I think would be the outcome for marrying a man for his money? I had an affair with another man even though I was married to my husband of 5 years, and now my life has been ruined. My husband saw pictures of my affair and I on the internet and didn't spare me before divorcing me and leaving me with nothing. He didn't even give me a chance to explain myself. He just went straight on into revenge mode. I didn't have an explanation by myself, even LOL. It just happened, but why did he have to ruin my life? I know I deserved it. You all on here will think that I deserved it. I had cheated on my husband. I had even done it in our home, and I had lied to his face and all that. But just know that I never planned for my marriage to end this way in the beginning. I thought I was going to fall in love and have beautiful children and get to live out my own happily ever after just like every little girl. But life came at me and I learned the hard way. Let me tell you my experience of how my husband ruined my life from the beginning. Sit tight and relax. My name is Sarah and I'm 30 years old, and my husband, or should I say ex-husband's, name is Mark, and he's 35 or something along the lines of that age. Let's just say he's in his mid-30s because I don't remember anything about his age or life since he decided to ruin my life. You can tell I'm lying, LOL. Anyway, I met my husband when I was 24. That's about 6 years ago. I had met him at a work function. It was a party celebrated at my workplace every year for everyone to get to know each other. He had been there for the party as a higher-up representative, or that was what he had told me when I had the courage to slide up to him and introduce myself. I didn't know he was going to turn out to be my boss. We exchanged contacts that evening and began chatting. Not frequently, but the once in a while, hello, how are you kind of stuff. Over time, he asked me out on a date, and I went because I had thought he was cute, you know. I hadn't been looking for anything serious. We went on one date, and I noticed he was a control freak, but I thought it was just me and I was just seeing things. He invited me on our second date, and that was when I found out that he had money and he was rich. I became interested at the sight of the green money bags. I mean, who the heck wouldn't? My husband courted me properly. I can't lie. He showered me with expensive gifts, luxury items, vacations, classy dates, and everything that would make a girl want to sell her soul for him. Then the big shocker came. I found out he was my boss. He was the general manager of our branch of the office and only came in once in a while, so I hadn't known. So my husband called me back then into his office and said he wanted to marry me. Straight on, asked you guys. No mushy proposal, no gathering of friends and family. He just went right on to it and began to list the pros and cons of getting married to him. We hadn't even dated for a year. I had just met him 6 months ago. At that point in time, I couldn't believe what I had witnessed either. But also at that point in time, I had needed money like crazy, and he had said I would get heavily compensated for marrying him. My ears just heard money, and I accepted to marry him. This was my first mistake. I had accepted to marry him and signed a prenuptial contract that said if I walked out of the marriage, I wouldn't be getting any of my husband's property. Accepting to marry my husband without there being a proper love base in our relationship was where my ruination began. We had just been two people pushed together to marry and then live in the same house. I didn't know this was going to be the end game of my marriage with him. I should have pushed myself to love him. I did push myself to love him, but we had never been meant to be in the first place. Anyway, we got married a little hush-hush. I couldn't even invite my friends and only had my sister from my family come for my wedding. My husband had his people show up and we got married on a beach under the warm afternoon sun. I moved in with my husband and the first year of our marriage passed by in a blur. The heavy compensation for getting married to him had been a condo property in downtown LA. Big, right? I can't wait for you to find out what became of that at my mess up. Anyway, he had said that he didn't want kids at the moment as he was still busy trying to build sustenance, and I totally accepted because I didn't want kids either, and we hadn't even talked about any of these things before we got married. Our second year of marriage went by, and the third year of marriage went by. By our fourth year of marriage, I began to notice how much of a control freak my husband was. Don't get me wrong, I had been noticing it since, but by our fourth year of being married together, I found out that my husband had an issue with not being obeyed. We had gone for a party, one of his friends' parties. I recall the friend had gotten engaged and had thrown a little party to tell all his friends and introduce his wife to them. He had been a game having friends. Can you imagine that? Anyway, we had gone for the party, and when we got there, I had leaned down to hug my husband's friend, and you should have seen the way my husband reacted. He had dragged me back by my gown, and I had almost stumbled to the ground, if not because he had been behind me to hold me up. I had stared at him like, what the heck? And he had subtly shook his head at me. In my head, I had been like, what, I couldn't hug men now? I had let it slide, guys, but throughout the year it continued like that. I couldn't wear a certain type of clothing. This man didn't allow me to wear dresses that showed off my thighs and didn't let me wear anything that could even highlight my curves even a little bit. Going out with him was like I was attending a monastery. I tried to see the good in what he was doing, but I doubt it came from a place in his heart. Was he possessive or jealous and didn't want other men to see my body? I didn't think so, and I had thought about that being the problem. But the thing with my husband was that he never showed his emotion. I could never tell that he loved me or wanted me. Oh, I could tell if he was angry or livid, all right. But when it came to things like Kobe and feelings and letting me know that he cared, he had been a closed book. Which lady liked any of those things? And don't come for me saying I had married him for money, so what did I expect? Well, that was why I had started having an affair in the first place then. It was because I had lacked the love of a man. Anyway, I'm getting to that. My husband never showed any of his feelings to me and was as controlling as the CIA. Sure, he gave me gifts. My husband could never go wrong with gifting, but at some point the gifting didn't cut it anymore. I had honestly grown tired, even at work. He made me go crazy at my job. Never marry someone that worked in the same place as you. Anything I did was under terrible scrutiny by him. And everyone knew I was married to him, so the lurking pity eyes I got whenever I got scolded for something anyone could have missed was infuriating. I'd almost considered quitting my job. He even told me I should. Can you imagine that? I should quit my job. I knew he could provide for me quite all right, but then I would stay in the house and let his controlling drive me crazy. Ain't no way I was going to do that. There was a crazy time when my husband had come back home from work and then suggested we go to the hospital to test for infections, and then to freeze my eggs so I could have children anytime I wanted. Who randomly came up with crazy things like that and didn't rest until he had his way? My husband did. And he made us go to the hospital that night and made me endure every poking and prodding, knowing I hated needles. Heck, maybe he didn't even know, just so he could feel good or whatever. I was livid that night and thought about ending the marriage. Maybe I could walk away with my house and all the luxurious gift items he had gotten me. Then I remembered that damn agreement I had signed and I sat put. If I left him, then I wasn't going to be getting anything out of the marriage, so let me try to love him so I could at least reap the benefits of being married to a rich man. That was what I had told myself. And I tried. I did what he said when he said, with a grudge, by the way. I tried to be romantic and do that love him enough for the two of us BS, but it was like I was hitting on a brick wall. My husband wasn't capable of love, and even with all the money in the world, I don't think I could be with someone who didn't love. I took him on dates, tried to know what he liked and disliked, and it just ended up in a disaster. The dates always ended up with him telling me what I could eat and what I couldn't eat, what wine to drink and what wine I couldn't drink. And do you know this man made me pay for all the dinners I took him on? Hilarious, right? That was my husband. He said I was the one taking him out and so I had to pay. He wouldn't waste his money on taking me out when there was food at home and didn't know why I was bothering myself. This was someone I had been trying to get to know and find a way to love. Do you think I was exaggerating with him? I didn't think I was back then. But when shit came down, I knew I could have done more and not let my fantasies on how perfect a man should be to ruin my reality. By the time we marked our 5th anniversary, my husband began traveling out of the city more. Our workplace had expanded and they wanted him on the project. It was later I found out that where I worked was owned by his family and he was the sole heir. 5 years of marriage to this man and he didn't think to tell me he was the heir to one of the largest franchise stores in LA. They had been looking to expand and I had thought they had just put my husband on the project so he could oversee it. He had won the Employee of the Year award 5 times. Now that I think about it, it could have all been rigged in his favor, LOL. Anyway, my husband began traveling more often and I began having time to myself to think and breathe and not be under the scrutiny of my husband 24/7. But then the idle mind is the devil's workshop, as they say. I began to have thoughts. Rich people always had one or two affairs on the side, didn't they? Maybe they had been as unhappy as I was and found the person who could give them the love they wanted on the side, so they had secret affairs. That had got to be the only reason why rich people had affairs, and I was just about to fall clutches deep into one. I met a guy on Facebook one day as I was randomly scrolling, not like I met him. I stumbled upon his pictures and my mouth watered and my libido ached for the first time since being married. My husband was terrible at S*X2, and I tried to avoid having it with him as much as possible. That was why he had taken me to the hospital to find out if I had an infection, Elmau. Anyway, I stumbled upon sexy guy's pictures, and when my female reproductive organs ached for the first time in 5 years, I knew I had to have him. I was still beautiful and sexy, so which man wouldn't want to have me, and I was rich. Well, rich by association, but the guy didn't need to know that, so I slid into his DM. Luckily, as life would have it, he was in my part of LA, and after a day and night of chatting and flirting with him, sexy guy wanted to meet up with me. Double luckily, my husband was out of town for that week, so I could go hook up with sexy guy and wipe the slate clean. I swore it was only going to be a one-time. You see those thoughts of rich people having an affair? I didn't have them until I had been handled by sexy guy. Let's call him Owen. Owen was bad news, but I hadn't known, of course. I had just been in it to fulfill my sexual needs at first, and I hadn't known that Owen was going to be the reason I was in this mess right now. I spent the weekend at Owen's place, and I had never been handled by anybody the way Owen handled me, and I was lost. I forgot all about my plot to make my husband love me, which I like to think I achieved, by the way, and I couldn't get enough of Owen. What was meant to be a one-time thing turned to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and I couldn't stop going back for more. My husband was out of town most times, so I had all the time in the world to spend with Owen. On Fridays, I would head straight to his place after work and let him send me to heaven with his tool, and I wouldn't want to go back to my house by the time the weekend was over. My husband was never going to find out. That was what I told myself, as it was meant to be just sex between Owen and I. I had even stopped flirty chatting with him to avoid catching feelings for him, but I guess it was inevitable. My husband got back from his trip, and I focused all my mind and attention into trying to love him and get him to shower me with more gifts, LOL. And when he traveled back again, I found myself at Owen's place. Owen was a pro, and I fell into his clutches. He had all the qualities I wanted in a guy. Loving, caring, attentive, hot, and not to mention super great in bed. Owen was the person I would have married if I hadn't been with my husband and Owen didn't know I was married already. He was thoughtful and was in tune to every need in my body. I'm not trying to make Owen sound poetic, but it was just who he was. But I didn't know he was a snake, or was it a wolf in sheep's clothing? I'll get to that. Things between Owen and I were supposed to end at just sex. I didn't know how I had fallen for him, and he had my life in his hands. I was having an affair with another man while I was already married to someone else, and I didn't mind. I did mind one bit. But life was about to play a game on me. I was rich, and I didn't hide that from Owen. I bought him gifts, gave him money to do whatever it was he was into. I didn't ask because that would have led to him asking me, and I couldn't as well tell him I was married. Anyway, I did all these things for Owen. And what did he do? Brutally stabbed me in the back. I got brave, and I think this was what brought about my ruin. I got brave with Owen. With my husband gone for a week, sometimes 2, I got brave. I didn't have any friends, so I didn't have anyone who was going to catch me and report me to my husband, so I began taking Owen out on dates. Not in broad daylight, I still had my husband's friends to be afraid of. I took him out in the night so we could enjoy the thrills that came with being together and out in the open. He didn't know I wasn't supposed to actually be with him, or should I say he did know and was just playing along to gullible old me. And if I was anything, I was gullible. We went out on dates, classy restaurants, amusement parks, and the movies. I was having too much fun with him, and you shouldn't blame me because I hadn't experienced this in my lifetime. I schooled in Texas with my parents, watching my every move like a hawk, so I couldn't have a boyfriend or take him out to see the movies and do all that romantic BS. So I was experiencing that with Owen for the first time in my life. But then I became too carefree. I could remember running into one of my husband's friends at a restaurant one time. I had thought my soul would leave my body and the ground would open up and swallow me then and there. My husband's friend had been on a date with his wife, and they had been leaving the restaurant when our eyes met at the entrance of the restaurant. He was coming out and I was going in, and I had my arms wrapped around Owen. And I thought for sure that I was done for then. He had looked between me and Owen, and I had introduced Owen as my new and truly gay business partner. Owen had stared at me like I was crazy, but I had awkwardly laughed and patted his arm, all in the bid to make it look like there was nothing romantic going on between Owen and I. Luckily, he bought it because he smiled at me and left, and I didn't hear about me cheating from my husband. I became extra careful after that incident. We reduced our outings and my husband got back from his trip. It was so funny how I had juggled between giving my attention to the two of them. My husband was someone that would notice something was wrong at the drop of a hat and would begin to investigate immediately, so I had to make sure he didn't suspect something. In an effort to please him, I had to quit my job so he would be distracted by that fact and not begin to wonder if I was cheating on him. He was pleased and happy that I had finally seen the light. I had even told him I was ready to have a baby. All these things just to get him off my back and not make him think something was wrong. I was nitpicking. I changed Owen's contact name to a laundromat number in the case he searched my phone because you really couldn't tell with my husband. He could search my phone and find out that I was having an affair, and that would be the end of me. LOL, I didn't know there were bigger plans for me. I didn't know the universe had been plotting an even bigger downfall than my husband just simply searching my phone and finding out that I was having an affair. Like a moth to a flame. I couldn't resist Owen's charm, and I had gone back to him in the night when my husband had gone away for his final trip to conclude the business expansion, whatever he had been working on. I didn't know when a photographer had taken a picture of me kissing Owen as I walked into his house, or that the photographer had followed us to the restaurant where we had our dinner date. I hadn't known all these things. In my mind, I had just gone out to hang out with Owen one last time before my husband became stable in our city again, and became his usual controlling self. I hadn't known that was going to be the biggest mistake of the century in my life. I enjoyed the dinner date, and then Owen had taken me back to his home and he had made sure I never forgot his name in bed. At least even though he did me dirty, I can say I enjoyed the S**X LOL. I will admit to a good thing when I can. I was at home with my phone scrolling like 2 days after seeing Owen for the last time when I got a notification from an unknown number, and I clicked open the message to see a news link with my picture next to the headline. I'd almost dropped my phone at the sight. I was so shocked that I opened it immediately and my whole mood turned sour. In the pictures, Owen and I had been dining together in a restaurant, and when I had kissed him in front of his house before following him in and then coming out of his home and seeing me enter into his car. The headline read, "Cheating Wife," and I had been shocked to say the least. What did a blog want from me? I wasn't a celeb that people had any interest in. I was just a regular married woman, so why had I been the person of interest? Luckily, it hadn't been viewed by a lot of people, and the writer had left his contact number to it, so I called him immediately with my hands shaking, and he answered. I told him to take down the pictures immediately, and this blog writer had the right to blackmail me. He said if I wasn't ready to pay him the money, he was going to post it on every online news outlet and social media blog. What if my husband saw it? What was I going to do? I begged the writer to take it down, and he said the only way he could do that was if I paid the sum of $5,000 into his account. I went to my savings immediately and transferred the money into his account. I was desperate and didn't want my husband finding out. He had just been talking about getting me a big gift. I wasn't going to let some stupid blogger ruin that and my chance of living rich with this man. Immediately, the blogger confirmed payment. I opened the link to the news and it was no longer opening. That was when I had realized I had been scammed. By that time, my head had calmed down to finally process what had just happened. I had just been blackmailed. Why? I hadn't known then. I hadn't known it had been a scheme by someone I had trusted most. I found out the hard way. Everything was quiet the next few weeks. In fact, I thought all my problems had finally fixed themselves because Owen had finally stopped disturbing my phone with calls and text messages. My husband has been more attentive ever since I told him I wanted to have a child. He wasn't all that bad anymore, and I was focused on what he had promised me for me once I had the child, so I couldn't let myself get distracted by Owen. In the end, money trumped love LOL. Anyway, things had been going smoothly on my end. Then one day, out of the blue, I got a call from an unknown number. The person on the call told me I was to pay a sum of $10,000 to his account if I didn't want to risk my husband finding out what I had done behind his back. That wasn't what I had been expecting at all. My blackmailer had come back. I was once again scared and had to ask my husband for the money because I didn't have anything in my savings account. You know when you're so desperate to the point when your lies hook you. I told my husband I was pregnant, and as a gift for the baby, I wanted $10,000. I had a fake pregnancy report ready in case he didn't believe, but he believed me with such ease. I never knew that was how bad he wanted a child. I lied to him when I should have just come clean and faced the consequences then and there. My husband was ecstatic when I had told him I was pregnant and gave me the money immediately. It was as if him hearing that he was expecting a child from me just completely changed him. He began being careful with me and telling me all the things I needed to know about having a baby. He was so happy. He asked if I needed to go for a checkup and all the hospital visits to ensure the baby was healthy. I lied to him and told him that I had already been to the OBGYN, and they said the baby was healthy. He was pleased with the reply. It was like he finally trusted me, and I was betraying that trust. This was what broke me for real. But I didn't confess what I had done to him. I told myself that once everything was all over, and I made certain the blackmailer was out of my life, I was going to fake a miscarriage, and then work towards giving my husband an actual baby. Karma looked me in the eye and laughed. Meanwhile, my blackmailer told me to bring the money to a location and drop it there and leave. I packed the money and went to the location. I saw a car parked there and dropped the money according to instructions, but I decided to stay back to see if I could get any information on my blackmailer. It wasn't even up to 5 minutes, and Owen was walking out from behind a dumpster to take the bag, and I saw red. I got out of my car without thinking and marched up to confront him. He had been the one blackmailing me. The pictures, the news, they had all been him. I told him he was a mad, weak, and lazy man who would never have anything good in his life because he took from people. I couldn't believe it was Owen that had been trying to destroy my life. I asked him why did he do it? Like why me of all people? Owen just laughed and said I was rich and he needed some money. Plus I was the most gullible person on earth, so he just had to play with me a little. Apparently he ran into my type once every 2 weeks. I had to get revenge. My third and final mistake before everything came tumbling down. I hired some men to go beat up Owen and make sure he deleted those pictures he had of me because I knew if I left him, he would want to blackmail me again, and I couldn't have that. I paid off the goons with my last savings and told them to make sure those pictures vanished from existence so I could finally have some peace and love my husband back and build a family. A week later, the men reported back to me that the job's been done. I could finally breathe, but my air supply was about to be cut short. The beating had only seemed to rile up Owen to do what he had wanted to do in the first place before he had thought of using them for blackmail, and I had provoked the sleeping tiger. My husband came back home angry and threw his phone at me immediately. I opened the door to welcome him. I caught the phone and saw my pictures on the internet, the ones that Owen took to blackmail me. They had been everywhere. The son of a bitch had pasted my pictures everywhere on the internet, and it was getting a lot of comments. He even added a video from us having S*X on the bed and blurred out his face, and mine was quite clear for all who knew me to see. I couldn't even utter words, and my husband was already throwing my things out of his house. He didn't waste any time in flinging out my luggages. He didn't even give me the time to explain or come up with a lie, and I was seeing myself being pushed out of the door. I begged, and all he said was that I would get a message from his lawyer. This was how my life ended in ruins. My husband had decided to be done with me. But did I stay and stop making mistakes? No. It was like I was in auto control to ruin my life to the fullest. I went to go and contest with my husband for the right to his property, not remembering that we had signed a prenup agreement. I had been desperate to get revenge when I had seen the divorce papers as I had gone to clear out my locker at work. The stares they had all been giving me was enough to make me want the ground to swallow me whole. But I had to keep my head high. With my last savings, I had hired a lawyer and then went to battle my husband in court for his property. Wrong mistake. The prenup agreement was revealed in court and my signature was clearly there on the paper, so my plan to part ways with half of my husband's property was crushed. I then thought I could contest for my house that he had gotten me, but the sneaky man had gotten the house under his name and had lied to me that it was mine. I paid through my nose for the court charges and lawyer charges, all for nothing. I began seeing the consequences of my actions when I noticed that no one was allowing me to work with them. Somehow, anytime I went up to an interview, the video somehow came into play. It was so downgrading, leaving job offers without positive reviews. The stares from the interviewers were alone to make me want to run away. And I did that. I went on to stay with my sister in Edinburgh, North Dakota, and I regret my actions till this day. If only I had tried to love my husband and not be ensnared in the traps of an affair. I would have been enjoying my marriage by now. I hope you guys take my advice and not cheat. You'll regret it like I am doing now. 6 months later. Hi Redditors, I'm here with an update. The worst possible thing happened to me. 2 months later, after my husband divorced me and I moved with my sister, I found out that I was pregnant. The stupid and twisted irony of life. I was pregnant and it wasn't my husband's own child like you figured out already. I was pregnant. Could you imagine that? Where was I going to start from? I was squatting with my sister who already had 2 children, and her husband was already giving me angry looks that I had overstayed my welcome. I hadn't even been able to land a job even after traveling miles away from the bad luck. And now my sister's husband wanted me to leave her house, and I was pregnant for another. When I found out, I thought about ending my life, but I geared up the courage to sail through, so I continued applying for jobs. You would think karma was done dealing with me, but it was not. I applied to a grocery store as a cashier. I got it and worked there for about 3 months without any qualms. After 3 months, on the 4th month of my working there, our grocery store was getting sold. Sold to who, you might ask? If you guessed my ex-husband's franchise, you were absolutely correct. Of all my dumb luck. Couldn't I have a breath of peace?
Yep.
My ex-husband came around to survey his store, and I couldn't dodge seeing him. He saw me when he came around, and he saw my round belly. He had dragged me into his office and demanded to know whether it was his child. I was torn in between lying, but I didn't want karma to have more leverage against me, so said no. I told him who owned the baby, and I unlocked a more brutal part of my ex-husband. He gave commands to my manager and told him that I would work extra hours if I was to earn my salary, and I couldn't quit because it was already difficult to find the one job. I stayed on and worked the long hours my manager assigned to me because I didn't have any choice. I shouldn't have stayed too long at the grocery store one evening, and when I got home, I was tired. Long story short, I lost my baby in the most cruel setup. I was overworked, WTV stressed, and not eating well, just because my ex-husband had to prove a point. The doctor then told me I would never be able to have kids again while my husband rolled around and lived his best life. I guess he had finally gotten what he wanted. My life was ruined.